Hello, and welcome to the section Maintaining Dependency Using Modules and Namespaces. In the first video, we're going to talk about implementing module imports and exports. Starting with ECMAScript 2015, JavaScript has a concept of modules, and TypeScript is also sharing the same concept. Modules are executed within their own scope, not in the global scope. This means that variables, functions, classes, etc. declared in a module are not visible outside the module, unless they are explicitly exported using one of the export forms. Conversely, to consume a variable, function, class, interface, and so on, exported from a different module, it has to be imported using one of the import forms. Modules are declarative. The relationships between modules are specified in terms of imports and exports at the file level. Modules import one another using a module loader. At runtime, the module loader is responsible for locating and executing all dependencies of a module before using it. Well-known modules loaders used in JavaScript are the CommonJS module loader for Node.js and Required.js for web applications. In TypeScript, just as in ECMAScript 2015, any file containing a top-level import or export is considered a module. The same way, a file without any top-level import or export declarations is treated as a script whose content are available in the global scope, and therefore to modules as well. Any declaration, such as variable, function, class, type alias, or interface, can be exported by adding the export keyword. Export statements are handy when exports need to be renamed for consumers, so we can take a look at the following example. As you see, we are exporting zip code validator class 2 times, which will be then available for other modules to be imported under two different names, zip code validator and main validator. Often modules extend other modules and partially expose some of their features. A re-export does not import it locally or introduce a local variable. Optionally, a module can wrap one or more modules and combine all their exports using export asterisk from module syntax. This is called many times as a barrel functionality, where we create a single point to access all modules available in our application. This is very useful when you want to expose a single entry point for some kind of reusable library to be used by other applications. Importing is just about as easy as exporting from a module. Importing an exported declaration is done through using one of the import forms. One of the options is to importing a single export from a module. It is also important to mention here that imports can also be renamed the same way as exports. Another option to import modules is importing the entire module into a single variable and use it to access the module exports. By using such syntax, all the exported statements from zip code validator file will be accessible from validator variable that we're declaring during the import statement. We can import our modules as a so-called side effect purpose. Though this practice is not recommended, some modules set up some global state that can be used by other modules. These modules may not have any exports, or the consumer is not interested in any of their exports. To import such modules, we use the following syntax. Each module can optionally export a default export. Default exports are marked with the keyword default, and there can only be one default export per module. Default exports are imported using a different import form. Default exports are really handy in cases where we use third-party libraries. A library like jQuery might have a default export of jQuery or a $, which we would probably also import under the name $ or jQuery. As you can see, this way we are declaring a default export. And this way we import the data from default export. Classes and function declarations can be authored directly as default exports. Default export, class, and function declaration names are optional, meaning that when you use default export, all the functions and classes declarations will be available at the imported location by default. Let's jump into a demo to see a more concrete example of default exports. So first let's create a new file called zipcodevalidator.ts and create a default export there. Now let's create another file and create an import there of our zip code validator. As you can see, it is working fine, and also it is important to mention that default exports can also be just simple values. An important note for those who is familiar with previous versions of TypeScript about terminology is that in TypeScript 1.5 the nomenclature has changed. Internal modules are now namespaces, and external modules are now simply modules, as to align with ECMAScript 2015's terminology, namely that module X is equivalent to the now preferred namespace X.